We are here because we are dedicated to helping members of our community build lean, strong bodies and confident, resilient minds. Determined to elevate the lives of working professionals, stay-at-home parents, and anyone who is ready to level up their life. Our invigorating group fitness classes, practical nutrition programs, and authentic coaches help ignite your life. Find a place that believes in you. Find a place that challenges you. Find CrossFit Southpaw. All right, and welcome back to the Southpaw Spotlight, guys. I'm your host, Nick Bach, and I'm here with one of our coaches and good friend, Andy O'Rourke. Andy is the lead pastor at Antioch Community Church. Did I say that correctly?
Yep.
Antioch Community Church, which has a whole nother story that's awesome as well. And so we'll maybe get into some of that today, but we're excited to have Andy on the show. Andy, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Nick. This is great.
Absolutely, man. So I thought a good place to start would just be to kind of give a brief 40,000-foot view of how you got into CrossFit and how you subsequently got into coaching.
Yeah, absolutely. So it was a little over 4 years ago that I got into CrossFit for the first time. My brother-in-law, Scott, lives out near the Wilmer area here in Minnesota. And he invited me to come along with him on a Memorial Day weekend workout called the Murph. And if you've been around CrossFit, you know that that's a workout that people do in honor of a fallen soldier, a hero workout every
Wearing
Memorial
the shirt
Day.
right now.
Oh, are you really? Yeah. So CrossFit affiliates all over the world do this Murph workout every year. And I didn't know what I was getting into, but I went with him, and there was this moment that is etched into my mind. It starts with a 1 mile run, and then it's 100 pull-ups, 200 push-ups, 300 air squats, and it finishes with a 1 mile run. Anyway, I get back from the 1 mile run and I come into the gym, and everybody else, a lot of people beat me, but everybody is in the gym. The music is blaring. People are doing all, different types of movements. And I was just like, this is awesome. I love this. So I got hooked. And when I got home back here to the Twin Cities, I started looking for CrossFit gyms to become part of.
That was almost like a fitness party.
Yeah, it was like a fitness party, and fun, competitive, supportive. Everyone was encouraging each other. It was
just to clarify too,
super challenging.
Yeah. Murph that was actually my first CrossFit workout too. I didn't know that.
Okay.
But just to clarify for people who maybe haven't done CrossFit before or first time listeners, not everybody does that rep scheme or runs that far or even runs in general. So there's a lot of variations of the workout, but the point is to push something that will push you out of your comfort zone. And it is quite a test of mental capacity, I think. But sorry to interject there. Keep going.
No, absolutely. And I wasn't able to do the full workout even when I did it that first time. So it gave me a lot of things to work toward myself, but to see other people that were doing it. It was exciting.
Awesome, man. So how did you make the transition then from athlete to coach? Walk me through that a little bit. Yeah.
So I've always enjoyed athletics and being active, being outside. Many years ago when I played organized sports, I played baseball and basketball, and I love to be active, competitive. And when I got into CrossFit, what really piqued my interest was it had this competitive aspect to it where you're not necessarily, trying to beat the person next to you all the time. That's not the goal, but competitive against yourself, trying to improve, trying to better yourself, and make progress. But it was also really challenging and a lot of variety. It wasn't mundane and monotonous. Every workout was a little different. You show up each day and it's the workout of the day. I loved that aspect of it. And as I got more familiar with the movements over a couple years, uh, it was kind of a natural progression for me to want to get involved in coaching, because I do a lot of coaching type things in the rest of my life, whether it's with my day job as a pastor at the church, or helping coach my kids' athletics that they're in. Coaching is just kind of a natural thing. So to apply that then to CrossFit, which I was really enjoying getting more involved in, was an easy transition.
It's kind of a natural evolution.
Hmm.
So this is great, and I want to unpack this just a little bit. When you talk about kind of having this coaching dynamic in the rest of your life, specifically as a pastor, obviously you're not, I would assume most of the time, not taking people through a squat progression when you're, in a church setting. But as a coach and knowing pastors, I do believe there's quite a number of similarities. So what do you mean when you use the word coach there, in that sense? What are you talking about, or what do you see as the role of a coach?
Yeah, absolutely. So, in my role as a pastor, uh, we actually use the term coaching a lot of times to refer to like coaching leaders.
Mhm.
And by that term, I mean, usually what you're referring to is helping somebody make progress, and achieve the goals, helping somebody get to where they want to go, or where they believe God wants them to go, investing in another person through relationship, so that they can grow in whatever area that is in their life, whether that's in terms of the church world, it would be focused primarily on spiritual growth, or relational growth, or growth as a leader themselves, or growth in an area of serving, or growth in their marriage, or whatever it might be. So that's easily transferable
Yeah.
to the CrossFit world or the fitness world,
Yeah.
because you're investing in a person through relationship so that they can make growth and progress. And the emphasis in the fitness world is going to be on physical fitness and health and well-being, but
Mhm.
there's a lot of parallels.
Yeah, I think that what you said, investing in the relationship, or investing in the person through a relationship, really hits the nail on the head. I like that language a lot. The um, there are different levels of leadership, and there are many different ways to define leadership. I'm sure there are many different theories on the levels, but the first one, or the most basic entry level one, is someone is a leader because of the position they're in, right? And sometimes we assume that that's what makes a leader, but what I found, and what research seems to indicate, is that the people generally don't buy into that, on a voluntary level, until they realize that you care about them, right? And
Yeah,
there is that relationship there.
yeah,
Um,
yeah, absolutely.
and
So we
that's
taught,
really a key of what we do as coaches, is not just being able to teach someone how to
yeah,
do a clean, or a squat, or a pull up. It's investing in knowing who they are, what they're
hmm,
about, what goals they have, what makes them tick, how they communicate well, and then being able to speak their language, to help facilitate change in their life.
yeah. And really, whether you're you're kind of going along the lines of exactly where I was going to go. So that's good with the leadership idea, because whether it's in the church world, in a pastoral setting, or a leadership in the church setting, or if it's in even the business world, there is a lot of discussion recently in literature about servant leadership. And that's a concept you see from my context, it's all over the Bible, a model of
Mhm.
servant leadership. And uh, I would try to apply that to coaching as well. And what I mean by that is, as a coach, I'm not here to show you how much I know or impress you, or something like that, or to wield my position and authority as a coach. But really, as a coach, you're here to serve the member of the gym, to serve the athlete. It's about them. It's not about me. And it's about me. It's about me helping them get to where they want to go.
Yeah.
And that's part of that servant leadership, I think.
Where did that the term servant leadership come from? Do you know if is that just kind of a phrase that you've picked up, or is there a specific? Did you read about it somewhere? I don't know. I like that phrase a lot.
Yeah, well, actually, Jesus talked a lot about it.
Okay.
So he referred to himself that way in the Bible, like in the Gospels. He said, he referred to himself as the Son of Man, and he said in Mark chapter 10, verse 45, the Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve and to give his life as a ransom for many. So it goes all the way back to Jesus. And then you see it many other places in the Bible, but yeah.
I think that's I really like what you said there, Andy, especially when it comes to coaching. One of my foundational beliefs and one of the motivations actually for opening Southpaw was that I think there was an assumption that developed as the sport of CrossFit grew and the methodology or the affiliate model grew in the kind of early days of CrossFit, that good athletes make good coaches, and they can, but it's not, they don't equate across the board. I think it's necessary to have gone through the fire a little bit to develop your own athletic prowess or understanding, to go through what it feels like to be an athlete. But I don't think that athletic credentials, so to speak, alone equate to good coaching. And I think that really what does matter when it comes down to it is that desire to serve, right? And that's what that connection between being a pastor or coach is. And that's really in many industries. I mean, people get into, I don't know why I use the analogy of being an auto mechanic so much, but they do that because they love working on cars and helping people by working on their cars, right? But if you can figure out where you like serving and where you find joy serving people. I don't find joy in going through complex upper level math problems, right? I probably wouldn't be a good engineer. But I like that idea of servant leadership a lot.
Yeah.
Have you seen that did there come a time in your CrossFit career when you felt like you were ready to make that switch into more of a teacher and guide than just an athlete? And not to say just an athlete.
Yeah, it was about, it was almost 2 years ago. So I had been involved in CrossFit for a couple years when I decided to go through the level 1 certification, the level 1 training to become a coach. And there are, many coaches and people that know a lot more about fitness and a lot more about CrossFit Fit and more familiar with the movements, etc. I have a lot to learn, but I wanted to learn more myself and then take what I had learned already and apply that and help others that were maybe new. But one of the great things, one of the values in my life is that I have is to be a lifelong learner in whatever area that is. So it's great to be part of a gym like Southpaw, where there's a lot of knowledgeable coaches that I can be around and learn from and grow myself as a coach, to teach others. So I may not be 10 steps ahead of the person I'm coaching, right? But if I'm 2 steps ahead, I can at least help them with those 2 steps ahead of knowledge and experience that I have. So
That ties into something we discussed briefly offline, but at Southpaw, we encourage people to have coaches for in their fitness programs, and this can lead to more rapid growth for them, or just athletic growth in general. We see a lot of people who just go to the gym and essentially spin their tires. They're not doing things either correctly to really harness the benefit of it, or they're doing the same thing over and over and over again, and the monotony has started to plateau. But encouraging people to have coaches, it's my belief that the foundational philosophy there is one of being a continual learner and having a white belt mentality, that we all have room to grow. And so I like to I like it when we as coaches practice what we preach, whether that's being willing to take a cue in class, or learning more about leadership, or going to coaching seminars, or whatever that happens to be. What are ways that over the past year or two, that you've tried to improve your own coaching outside of just the act of coaching itself?
hmm yeah, I can a couple ways, that I've tried to improve coaching, and I'm still trying to do that, come to mind. Um, I mean, if there's a if there's a workout that I'm scheduled, to coach on that day, and if it's definitely, if it's something, a movement that I'm not familiar with at all, right, I'll have to do some research, whether that's reading or watching some different videos to try to educate myself on proper movement mechanics, safety, etc. That's been really helpful. Or additional courses or certifications. I've done some of that, but for
And I'd
me,
assume that's kind of like, sort of interject here, but that's
yeah,
similar to when you're preaching. You've read through the Bible a number of times, but if you're going to give a sermon on 2 Corinthians 12:9, you're going to go read that, right? and
right,
and maybe in different versions, and try to look at some of the etymology of the words, or the stories around it, or that it
yep,
ties into, just as a
yeah,
refresher, right?
yeah. Yeah, so that's a great example. I'll use your example because it's good. It's helpful with like preaching, if you want to improve in preaching, to read some books on preaching, to read some articles on preaching. But one of the maybe even more helpful ways to grow is like to listen to a lot of
Hmm.
different types of preachers
Hmm.
and learn that way too. So I think one of the most helpful things for me is uh, to to attend the different classes where there's different
Hmm.
coaches coaching, and see how other coaches, lead through the warm up, how they explain movements. I learn best from like observing someone
Hmm.
doing something and explaining something, and then trying to do it myself.
Hmm.
Even for me, even more than like reading about it, like
Yeah.
seeing it in person, hearing it in person. I learn well that way. So um, learning from the other coaches that I'm around at Southpaw, I think has been huge. And I'll even, if I'm coaching, in the middle of the day, on a Tuesday, for instance, I love to go to the early morning class, and that really helps me to effectively coach even better later on in the
Hmm.
day. If I've gone through the workout myself and then heard someone explain things maybe a little differently than I would,
Hmm.
and
It gives you a framework and some
yeah,
ideas. Yeah. And I think
yep,
that's this is a quote that can be controversial, but a guy that I admire in many ways, is one of his favorite quotes, and he repeats it over and over. Good artists borrow, great artists steal, right? The idea that um, it's not, and it's not direct stealing, right? It's taking an idea that you like and that you've seen, and morphing it into your own, right? So it's not just complete
yep,
plagiarism, but it's like, hey, I really like the format of that, and what I was thinking about when you were talking, or one of the things that I was thinking about, was watching another coach, or going to a presentation, or watching a pastor preach, and then evaluating it through a framework of, okay, why did they do things that way? It could be the tone of their voice, it could be the cadence that they used, or a particular movement they used in the warm up, and then in that context, having a conversation with them or with somebody else about the more overarching themes of it. I've had a few coaches come up to me after classes recently and ask for feedback, or asked, why do we do this or that? And there's usually intention behind it, and it's great to have those. And if not, it helps you, or helps me as a coach, think more critically about what I did or what I saw. And I think that
Yeah.
those interactions, whether that's on a one-on-one level or more group level, are so helpful.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think to grow as a coach, reading and research for sure, but then learning from other coaches. And the other the other thing that comes to mind too kind of goes back to that foundation of relationship with the
Mhm.
athletes that you're coaching. Um, I really think the relationship that you have with them and the tone that you set in the class that you're coaching, it's so important. So if I have, for instance, um, a posture of humility, I can give some instruction, I can do some teaching, but there's a lot of things that I don't know, right? And if
Mhm.
somebody asks a question about something that I don't know the answer to, I can just be, have humility and be honest and say,
Mhm.
I don't know the answer to that.
Mhm.
Or I can, be open and vulnerable about myself as an athlete.
Mhm.
Like for instance, if I'm teaching a movement to the class, and if it's a really hard movement for me,
Mhm.
because of a mobility issue, or
I can get a front rack with the PVC pipe, so I
yeah,
can call
yeah,
myself out on that.
whatever it might be. I mean, this has happened recently where, I'll demonstrate the movement, and I'll just be honest and say, this is a really hard movement for me. So,
Mhm.
and what that does, um, you as a coach, you're not posturing, you're not
Yeah.
acting like you know everything, and
Mhm.
you're making you're having vulnerability and humility
Mhm.
that will go a long way
It
to
allows them to feel more comfortable being vulnerable with you.
yeah, yeah, and it gives you credibility.
It
It gives
makes
you
you more
credibility.
human. Yeah.
Yep.
And I
It
think
gives
as
you
well
more
too.
credibility to speak into their lives,
Yeah. And
because
I
they
think
trust and respect you then.
s- sometimes the best coaches are mediocre athletes who have had to really go, like, there are people I've seen come in and just pick up a barbell and be able to do an almost flawless clean the first try. But when you've really had to struggle with it and learn it and figure out how to get into the correct position and catch it in a squat or whatever that happens to be, it really helps you own that movement. So I think there's a taking it in a different direction. I think that can be a positive thing as well, of
Yeah.
really needing to go through the pieces to help learn that.
Yeah. Yeah.
That does, I think, tie back into the idea of servant leadership, right? Of being vulnerable. And something that I try to do too is when people ask a question that I don't know the answer to, or I'm not 100% sure on it, is I say, I'm not sure about that. We're going to do this today, but I'm going to look it up and get back to you, right?
Yeah.
And that
Absolutely.
has that element, I think, of
Yeah.
humility, while also establishing the kind of energy and keeping the energy up of the class, or whatever that happens to be.
Yep. Yep.
Um,
Absolutely. Yeah,
yeah.
and if it's a very involved, discussion about something, you can take the time to chat, offline
Mhm.
or after the class with that
Yeah.
individual, or work with them separately.
This
But
made me
yeah.
think of, you know, it's just like having a professor in college or a teacher in high school. And I remember going into my AP US history class. I probably shouldn't have been in the AP class, debatably, but we had the most phenomenal teacher in high school, Mr. Simpson, and he was a maniac. but just a great teacher. And I loved the class, right? And same thing with some of my classes in college. And had ones that I thought the title of the course was like the coolest thing, and I was going to love it. And it was just a bomb. And a lot of it was because of the professor or teacher. And there were
Right.
certainly things that I could have done to make myself enjoy it more or become more engaged in the class. But the point of this is that a lot of our demographic are busy with kids, with work, with social lives and their families and everything else going on. And quite frankly, they don't have time to go search out all those resources, and we don't expect them to. So we want them to be able to come in to a place where they're known, and they don't have to think about the workout. They don't have to think about how to do it. They know that they're going to do it safely by someone who
Yeah.
cares about them.
Yep. They know they're going to be taken care of.
Mhm.
And yeah, most of the adults that are part of the gym, they're not preparing for, some fitness competition.
Yeah.
They're not heavy training, preparing for,
Mhm.
being a professional athlete or something like that.
Mhm.
They want to look good, they want to feel good, they want to have a place where they belong,
Mhm.
leave feeling like, hey, I got a good workout, I can approach the rest of my life now. And
Mhm. And I would
that's
also say this, I haven't thought about this until you said it that way. When the high level CrossFit athletes or whoever that I've encountered, a lot of times, they're training 3 to 4 hours a day,
hmm
trying to sleep 8 to 10, eating right. But the stressors outside of physical stress in their life is very low. And for a lot of our members, the stress in their life, physically is moderate to high with the training that we do. But when you pair that with the stress of all the other things going on in their life, it still is a tax on the head, on the central nervous system, which is why we really um, are careful to make sure that people aren't overdoing it and really focus on the longevity side of things. But it's similar, just not it's not separate but equal. That's there. It's
yeah
not the quote I'm going for there,
yeah
but
yeah
right, or maybe it is separate but equal. It's just different, right?
yeah and
The
we
extremes are
want,
different.
we want people to be able to, to come to the gym 4 or 5 times a week,
Mhm.
not just 2 times because they absolutely destroyed themselves on those 2 days, and they
Mhm.
have to recover for 3 days to come to the next class.
Yeah.
You know,
Andy,
so,
as we wrap up here, I have a kind of a standard closing question, but I'm not going to
okay.
do that with you. I'm going to kind of put you on the spot. I just popped into my head as we've been talking. Um, the standard closing question is, what would you tell someone who was thinking about getting into CrossFit? But with you, I'd like to ask you, what do you see as how does spirituality and how do fitness and spirituality synergize each other? Do they, and do
Yeah.
you think that they do? Is there an interplay there? Do they help each other grow in a sense?
Yeah, no,
That's a
that's a good
big topic
question.
too. So,
Yeah, no, that's a good question, and I've actually thought a lot about that. I've continued to think a lot about that. I'm a big I'm a big believer that when you talk about, what does it mean? What does it mean to be a healthy person?
mhm,
If that's the question that you're wrestling with, um, as human beings, we're not just physical matter.
mhm,
Um, at least from my perspective and from my paradigm, we're physical beings, we're mental beings, we're emotional beings, and we're spiritual beings.
mhm,
So you can't, if you only address getting more physically healthy in your life through fitness, uh, that's only a fraction of the pie of how you're
mhm,
made up. Like, health is holistic, is
mhm.
what I'm getting at.
Yeah.
But on the other side, if you're trying to grow spiritually, but you're not eating healthy, you're not taking care of yourself physically,
Mhm.
that's also, wrong. That's an error on the other side. So I really think to pursue health as a person is, as I believe, God has made us and designed us and wired us. It's a holistic pursuit. So that means emotional health, spiritual health, and physical health. So I know for me personally, there's so many benefits from physical fitness that it that don't just relate to, you know, building muscle or losing weight.
Mhm.
That's what I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about how physical fitness and physical health impacts every other area of your life. It
I
helps you
would say that
deal with depression and anxiety, and I mean
yeah,
working out is so helpful for those things, and stress.
I'm
It's all
not,
intertwined.
um, I've never thought of it this way, but when I have a good workout or I'm in a good part of life where I'm exercising regularly, I am more in tune with the miraculous in my own life. I'm more
Mm,
aware of it, right? With the little moments that are just like, wow, that sunset is spot on right now, or like that was really nice of that person to do that, or that person really looks like they're hurting right now. I'm less in my own head and more present
yeah.
with how I'm connecting in the world, which is a gift. And I heard
Mm,
recently that someone postulate or speculate that our our unique advantage as humans is identity alchemy. And to unpack that briefly, I thought it was fascinating. But you know, if if it's a sheer like speed thing, like cheetahs have us beat.
mm,
Most animals have us beat. If it's a strength thing, I'm sure there's apes and gorillas and lions that would maul me to death. So the physical component is important, and it's, as you know, there's so many reasons that we live longer and whatever to be in good physical shape. But our ability to um, change our identity and how we process things, how we look at the world, and think of creative solutions, rather than just always having this biological primal response to each situation that comes to us, is
mhm.
really what makes us human. And I think
Yeah.
exercise allows me to do that more rapidly. And it opens my mind to experiences that I may not otherwise see, whether that's spiritually, mentally, physically, whatever that happens to be.
Yeah, absolutely. It help and that's exactly what I'm getting at. It helps you to be able to enjoy life and experience joy in the rest of your life.
Mhm.
The
Yeah,
and it's all intertwined into what it means to be a healthy person. All these
mhm,
different aspects are important.
yeah. I like this idea. We were talking about it. I talked to Drew Shep
Mm,
yesterday, and I can't remember the word that we came up with, but I don't like the idea that like happiness is the end all be all of life, and it's almost an empty word to say like I just want to be happy, right? And it's not about happiness per se or just being content. It's about finding meaning, right? Or
mhm,
um, uh, finding this synergistic effect in our life where we can kind of fire on all cylinders between the various things that we're working on.
mhm.
And
Yeah,
that doesn't mean that you have balance all the time, right? That there are days where you're inspired and you're just going, and there are days that
yeah,
you need more rest. And anyway, it's beautiful and fascinating, and there's so many areas to explore. But I really appreciate your time today, Andy. It's great having you on. um, thank you so much.
yeah. Thanks for having me. It's been great.
All right, man. Well, you take care. We'll see you soon.
All right, we'll see ya.